New year, new death battle. With the 2025 season of Death Battles premiere, Kratos versus Asura. So this is a matchup that's been getting requested for years, and we know that because this was on both previous request polls, and both times it lost, though it got pretty close in the Tournament of Champions. It lost to Cole versus Alex in the 3D Champions ballot, and lost to Wile E. Coyote versus Tom Cat in the Tournament of Champions. Which makes it funny that this has come out before Wile E versus Tom, but also, of those two, this is the one I probably wanted more, but that's mostly just, I didn't really like Wile E versus Tom, so this one was like, I would like to see Asura. Though, I'm not 100% in it, and that's mostly just due to, I like Asura, and his game is cool. I went back and played through it during the break, because it is a very short game. I almost beat it in one sitting. It is cool, it has neat ideas, it's a little clunky, and then no one bought it. On the other hand, I've not played any of Kratos' games until recently, where I played through the first God of War. That is mostly just due to the fact I had an Xbox, so I didn't play God of War games. I did have a PS2, but I wasn't really playing things like God of War. I was playing Kingdom Hearts. But outside of that, I watched a Let's Play of the other God of War, and that game is neat. I would definitely need to play it myself to get a better understanding. And we'll get into some more stuff for that whenever we go over the characters. But yeah, I think this was a neat episode. Definitely a lot of people making it were invested in this one. They like Kratos and they like Asura, and they want to show off that these are two cool guys. From the reaction in this episode though, it is very split, and that is purely down to people had very inflated expectations for this episode, which is, heightened by the fact that people have been requesting it for years. It almost won 2 separate votes, and then it was teased again during the Kickstarter video where they had a preview, which we saw a little bit of in the fight. And then also the gap between Among Us vs. Fall Guys and Kratos vs. Asura ended up being a little longer than people were expecting. Mostly in the sense of, we expected this episode to come out in January. It instead came out right at the beginning of February. Which, what does that mean for the schedule going forward? Who knows? It shouldn't be that bad though. We still expect one a month. We might get the next episode a little quicker, but let's not request too much. But yeah, I like it. People had some high expectations, and they were never going to get mad. And that kind of happens somewhat frequently in this space, and it's a little annoying. But let's talk about that episode now. Kratos. I don't know too much about Kratos, just because I haven't played too many of his games. But from what I saw of the original one, especially compared to the later one, for what I saw at least in the 2018 God of War, it's definitely neat, but also you need the context to kind of get a lot of the neat stuff that game is doing. Though it mostly focuses on his current Norse equipment set. I think for the mix of, it's not clear if he still has some of those old Greek items and abilities, and then also his new Norse stuff is kind of just way better, therefore not much need to go back to old items. Though they still bring them up just for, I guess, clarity, just to go over all that he has. Yeah, they definitely speedrun through his Greek half. Mostly for a mix of a lot of the more interesting stuff that he's gone through is in his more recent games, which people want to see explored. And then also, they technically already covered his Greek stuff way back when he fought Spawn. But also saying that they covered that is kind of generous, because that is a season 1 episode. There are some things that, just because I haven't seen Ragnarok, so there's a lot of stuff from that I'm not familiar with. I don't know how many realms you go to in that. And also, apparently Atreus turns into a bear at the end. What does that mean? I'll get to that in 7 games? One of the things that was brought up kind of during all of this wit for this episode, and kind of has been for Kratos all the time, is that Kratos himself doesn't do much. Kratos himself's feats are not that impressive, but when you bring in the context of the godly abilities that these people claim to have, it makes it seem more impressive. But it definitely has a disconnect on what you see happening and what is claimed to have happening. The biggest ones being Helios, I think, is the biggest one. You know, he's there to illuminate the entire underworld. Very fast, I mean, speed of light at minimum, because he is the sun incarnate. And they're like, oh, he outsped him, but whenever that happens, doesn't look like that a lot. He's just kind of stumbling towards him. It's kind of iffy. But if you don't take that context into it, it doesn't really work anymore. Because the whole point is that he's impressive because he defeated gods, and the gods are impressive because they are responsible for natural phenomena or the creation of everything. So, what can you do? On the other hand of that spectrum, though, we have Asura. Now, Asura only has the one game, and I think a manga adaptation. But for the most part, it's just that game. Because it came out kind of at a bad time for Capcom. It was around that time when they were just having some bad business practices. I mean, this one has one of the worst ones where the ending of the game is DLC. And even then, the game didn't sell that well. So it's gone down as a bit of a cult classic. People like it, but people don't know too much about it. I have played that game. It is neat. It's kind of clunky. Like, it's not the most fun to play, but it is a cool anime to watch. But that was kind of the point of it. Not a ton to go over with them because it's very clear. Because as opposed to Kratos, you see everything that Asura does. You don't need someone to tell you like, oh, Asura is super strong, he can blow up a sun. You see him blow up a sun. Like, that's not in question. It's like, he's very strong. He killed the god of the universe. Yeah, you punched him so hard he started feeling these QTEs, which is so sick at the end of the game. There isn't really much that they went over that we don't already see from the game. They kind of just went over everything. And there's not much to explore with Asura that isn't just explicitly shown in his own game. The only thing you can really apply to that is just add numbers to it. How fast that space lizard went. How strong he has to have been to blow up all of those spaceships. How strong he must have been to kill Chakravartin. You know, stuff like that. And also maybe just some, like, you know, context to people that may not know who Asura is. Because he is cool. Not as much as like Kratos needs to go into. And also, because I already played Asura's Wrath, and it's not the most complex game, you don't really need to go into it as much as like the God of War series, which has like at least 8 games compared to Asura's 1. But let's go to the whole reason these episodes exist, which is the fight. And before we go into the fight, we go into the extraneous material. Let's go on with the voices. So in this episode, Kratos is voiced by Hussein Mohammed. He's only done Kratos, this is his Death Battle debut. Though according to his IMDb, he has played Kratos before in something called God of War Fallen God, which is a podcast. I don't know if it's an official podcast. He's done a lot of like little indie shows and like web series. So nothing I'm familiar with. He has a really good voice. He does a pretty good job as Kratos, though. Probably clear from how he has done him before in that podcast that might be real or not. Asura is voiced by Christopher Guerrero, who is a long-time Death Battle alumnus. He was the KO battle announcer since Season 2 up until Season 7, when they replaced him with Ringmaster, and has voiced several fighters, including Gaara, Bean, Carnage, and Saberwolf. He also does a lot of actual, like, main voice acting, like he's currently the voice of Akuma in Street Fighter 6, as well as Thoth in Smite, and Ichiya in Fairy Tail. And now for the song of the fight, Reidi, by Lerworth Media, featuring Chick Named D. This is a cool track. It definitely merges a lot of the signs of the soundtrack for God of War and Asura's Wrath. Mostly, I think, the later God of War, people are more into at the moment, like the Norse stuff, and Asura's Wrath stuff, which probably shocked a lot of people, or like, people weren't expecting it. They wanted like a, big bombastic, like, rock anthem for these, like, titans clashing, but instead you get what they usually sound like. It being called Reidi is cool. It is a Old Norse word meaning anger. It fits both of them and representative of Kratos' current status in the Norse pantheon. I liked it. It's very long, given that the fight itself is very long because it has to cover the whole thing. But yeah, I enjoyed it. And now let's talk about the fight. So this is another 3D fight, and it's animated by returning animator Devil Artemis, who has been here for a while, and given what we've seen here, it definitely makes it clear that Devil Artemis is a kind of all over the place when it comes to Death Battle animations, because sometimes they're really good and really cool, and then other times they're like kind of jank and not great. Like just scrolling through ones that he's done, Most of them are good. There's only a couple that really stand out as like not great, being like Batgirl versus Spider-Gwen and Jason versus Mike. And even then in other ones, there's still some like clunky stuff, but it feels more clunky just due to circumstances around the episode. Like in Darth Vader versus Obito, where it's a little clunky, but that's mostly due to the clashing of art styles between Star Wars and Naruto. And also the weird shifts that he has to do between the two Obito models. This one, for the most part, is really good, but I think given his style, it doesn't work 100% for Kratos because Kratos is a very photorealistic model. Asura is much more stylized, and I feel like Devil Artemis works better with less realistic things. He's mostly known for working with like Dragon Ball models. Both of his last two fights that he did for Death Battle were Dragon Ball fights. Frieza vs. Megatron and Bardock vs. Omni-Man. And those characters got animated very well. There's still little bits of jank in both of them, but not that much. I think Megatron really worked well for his style, and they had to make, it seems like they had to make an entire original model for Omni-Man so he would just fit with the Bardock model. And there's some jank in that one too, but it's mostly just, I think, a personal issue with one of the scenes, but for the rest of it, really good. Also, in this fight, you can definitely see like his clear Dragon Ball favoritism, I guess, because there's like a Dragon Ball fight that happens during it. But let's move off that. There is good stuff. One weird thing is that this is a 6-minute long fight. This is the second longest fight in Death Battle. I think before Goku vs. Superman 1, and I would actually have to check how long Thanos vs. Darkseid is, because that one is also quite long. But like, even though it is 6 minutes long, personally, and I think a lot of people, it doesn't feel 6 minutes long, which I think means it's paced really well, because it feels like it goes way faster than 6 minutes. I think it's very slow paced, but it doesn't feel as long as it actually is, which is very commendable, but might also be working against the episode in certain ways. Overall, I do enjoy a lot of the stuff that happens in the fight. I enjoy pretty much all the stuff Asura does. Asura looks great during the fight. He does a lot of cool stuff. The issue is definitely that Kratos doesn't react very strongly to a lot of the stuff that he is hit by, which definitely makes it seem that Asura is not doing a very good job in this fight. And on the Kratos side, I think the stuff he does with the spear looks great. Like, very good. Standard fisticuffs also look good. Though there's a weird kick, but I think that's mostly just due to his leg kind of clips through his like skirt thing. And that's sometimes just kind of unavoidable in 3D animation, especially when you're using someone else's model. Stuff the X, pretty solid. The issues kind of come with the Blades of Chaos, but I'm not going to fault him too much for that, because they're essentially whips. Whips are hard. The two main moments with the Blades of Chaos that just kind of look a little off, being the first time he uses them, they just kind of shoot out a little bit. It doesn't feel like he doesn't like swing them when there's no real momentum. He just kind of put them forward and they go. And then near the end, whenever he uses them to kind of swing, that one's more egregious because you kind of hang on that shot for quite a bit. I still enjoy the fight. It's very different from other ones. And the whole like final sequence with Destructor Asura, it's a reference to the fight with Wyzen. Whenever it started, you kind of expected where it was going, but it was still cool because it was cool when they first did it. Yeah, and then the Rain of Spears, the jump over with the Blade of Chaos. No, not the Blade of Chaos, the Blade of Olympus. Very neat, and then a very somber ending. It was quite nice. So, Kratos won. This was seemingly very expected, especially when you take lore into account. And we got some very, very big numbers, but also some kind of contentious reasoning for the lore. The biggest ones are definitely like scaling Kratos to Helios, just because it sounds a little iffy. And the one at least I personally am not a huge fan of is scaling his power to the destruction caused during Ragnarok. Mostly because you're scaling him to a different guy, and because I didn't play God of War Ragnarok, I don't really know what Freyr's deal is. And I always find it kind of iffy when it's like, well, he can do this because this other guy did it. And that's kind of the base of versus debates and such. But it's always kind of, I'd rather they didn't. Like, that was definitely the biggest issue with Ryu versus Jin, because it kind of ended up being Kazuya versus Akuma. It definitely is fair enough of, like, he has weapons that can absorb energy. If Asura loses all his mantra, he's dead. Can't survive without it. And continuing from stuff that's happened in previous episodes, notably Bugs vs. Eggman, we've gotten a full alternate ending, though as opposed to Bugs vs. Eggman, where those alternate endings or more alternate scenarios were just showing off different things that could have happened during the fight, but it didn't change the verdict. Bowser still won all of those interactions. They just showed how if Eggman used this would have happened. This one, however, is a straight up alternate ending. This is, at the end, Asura gets up and wins, and I do really like that. I enjoy the use of QTEs in the fight. I just wish there were more. What I wanted was that both of them got QTEs, where Kratos's were PlayStation buttons and Asura's were Xbox buttons. Because I feel like most people played Asura's Wrath on Xbox, but that might just be because it was during the 360 PS3 era, and I think just more people had Xboxes at the time. But instead, they more or less just give him PlayStation buttons, so it kind of fits both of them because he's the only one that gets them. You see a burst midway through the fight, and he uses an R2 button, and then during this alternate ending, he's mashing the circle button. And I really liked how the mash noise was kind of off rhythm, because when you're mashing in games like that, you kind of get tired halfway through and you have to like kind of pick it back up. Yeah, really enjoyed that. It felt like a stronger ending than the one that we actually got. It was still neat, and it was nice to see just some cool stuff for Asura in current day and age. And we got the reveal of next time, which apparently we got last week at MagFest if you were there. I didn't see that, so I got to see this matchup when everyone else did.
Have a nice death.
Who said I was a hero?
Ghost Rider versus Spawn. So I am a very limited comic reader, but I know these characters, and whenever I saw this matchup was being done, the only words that came to me were, hell yeah. Ghost Rider is awesome. Spawn's pretty cool. I will be very interested to see where they go with it. What can Ghost Rider do that they didn't show when he fought Lobo? And hell, the last time we saw Spawn was the last time we saw Kratos. So it's been forever. I'm sure there's been more Spawn comics since then, but more reasonably, they have someone that has gone and read every Spawn comic now, instead of just what they remember from the TV show and comics they picked up during the 90s. That'll be very fun to look forward to. And we will be there for it in like 3 to 4 weeks whenever that comes out. Until then, see ya.